Hello. So we're going to try Vaesen. Vaesen is a follow-up book to Norse gods. Johan Egerkrans is Swedish, I think, and he likes sharing about his culture and Swedish legends and lores. So this is Vaesen, and it's about monsters and fae and all sorts of strange things. I don't want to skip anything. There's this lovely bit here, it's just Vaesen. It's like a fairy on a crow or a raven. Quite lovely. And this is a collection of spirits and monsters of Scandinavian folklore. And it's both collected and illustrated by Johan. The monsters, I saw what seemed like evil eyes in the thicket's tangled net, and now and then behind me heard the rustle of sly footsteps from Skogen in the forest by Gustav Fröding. Just all sorts of wonderful little critters and creatures, delightful. It starts off with a lot of what you might expect, little fairy houses and fey creatures, something that reminds me a bit of Tony Dieter Lizzy's work. There's crow people and whatnot. The writing, it talks about, like in Norse mythology, tells of the Ijosselfar, light elves, and the Svartalfar, or Dokalfar, the dark elves. These are supernatural beings who had the power over the elements, even though they weren't gods. In Norse mythology, the elves and the dwarves were largely intermingled, right? They were like one peoples. The separation, I think it might very well have come, in England, but that's something for another time. I would love to kind of dive into that. That would be cool, man. This is just, we've got nature spirits, some really remarkable drawings. Sorry for the instability of my camera here. I love these things here, like these little fairies. The section on the fairies is quite lovely. I had an idea while I was walking with Jenny the other day about fairies that ride fire-breathing hummingbirds. I'm trying to find a way to work it into my game. When I jump into a book like Vaesen, which I believe has its own role-playing game, which I don't have. There's when I dive into this book and whatnot, it's very similar to the Johan's book on Norse gods for me. This is one of my favorite pieces here. This is a gnome. This is a farmstead gnome. I just love the detail. The pipe in the belt, the notches in the axe. Absolutely adore it. Yeah. So then there's all sorts of little critters and whatnot. The mermaids, havsfrö, little mer children, right? What a delight. So this piece, I think, is my favorite in the book. This one is of a giant, and you can see the sword sticking out of his back, and he's meeting with a raven. The section talks a bit about giants and how giants are viewed in Norse mythology. Here's a mill gnome. We start getting into the more strange creatures. This one is the nymph of the springs and a woodwife. Oh man. Now we're talking about what normally is, you can see her goat hooves and whatnot. Much of the Vaesen, the Johan's books are, sometimes you get that moment in putting a game together where you are a little lost in the weeds. You're not sure what you're going to do next. And so it's easy for me to kind of fall into that. I see this one, the Naken, and I think of, while it's depicting a water spirit that lives in a river or a waterfall, I can't help but thinking of Tolkien's Gollum, But like I was saying, the inspiration that comes from just looking at a picture or reading a small passage, like in the deep dark forests of southern and coastal Sweden live the trolls. They are secretive creatures who live together in mountains and hills far from human settlements. And it makes me want to run a game or write a game about trolls, And so maybe I just grab on to the like most iconic, right? The trolls under the bridge, and I kind of start riffing on that, and seeing where that takes me. And I find that is a truly wonderful thing. Here we've got spirits, all kinds. These are some lovely plates here. These are just remarkable plates. So we've got familiar spirits, and then this is called a milk hare. The milk hare is just a rabbit. It's trying to steal your milk. Now we start getting into the more nightmarish stuff. The shape changers, the night hags, the werewolves. Then we get into the undead with the ghasts. You get to see some of the sketch work. These troubled spirits are revenants, and they invoke the kind of danger. They revisit that we're not just monster hunters delving into the depths to steal treasure. We're not just murder hobos, Like in fantasy roleplay, you're playing in fairy tales, and it can be that. It doesn't have to just be, like it's negative. In all honesty, for me, when I start jumping in and working on pieces as delightful as this one, right? Like I don't really care what's going to happen once the table switches, right? Once I get the game on the table, I'm not really partial to what's going to happen next. I'm much more interested in the moment, right? Because that's what the inspiration is for me. So in the moment, I'm just grabbing some shit to put into my game, and I don't have to stress or worry about like trying to, I don't know, invoke tone. You hear that all the time. Trying to reach a specific tone. It doesn't really matter when I'm having the fun. And the fun of game mastery is in game prep as often as it is in play. that's why people do a lot of game mastery, I think, is because they get an incredible amount of joy and satisfaction out of the fairy stories and the things that they tell. And then when it gets to the table, it stops being yours. And so you actually get this wonderful relief sensation of not having to own it anymore. You don't have to, it's not really yours anymore. And that's kind of delightful, man. And so maybe even if you spend all the time, that building this incredibly robust and lovely fantasy world during your prep time, and you get it to the table, and maybe people had a hard day at work, and all they really want to do is roll dice and push lead. Well, that's all right, man. Because you already had the joy of the fun story. And so now running for the murder hobos is perfectly fine. Like if people don't acknowledge your tone, well, that doesn't really matter, man. You already got the part that you were looking for, and you can present to them everything that you've worked on. And you don't have to be tied or married to it. More importantly, you can kind of discover what happens next. And that's a freedom, and it comes a lot from books like this, where it's, I mean, really, they're not, books like this are not really meant for the players, man. This is for the game masters. They may look like us, but they are not of this world. They have many names and many guises. They are elusive, bewitching, and dangerous. Thanks a lot.